Hey, Family Twist fam, it's Corey. If you joined us for part one of our conversation with J. Stephen Osborne, then you know we ended on a cliffhanger. And we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're actually going to replay that jaw-dropping moment right at the top. It's the scene where Stephen is sitting on a plane, thinking he's heading home from a relaxing vacation when everything he thought he knew about his identity unravels in a single phone call. It's raw. It's real. And we didn't want you to miss the emotional weight of that moment as we head into part two. In this episode, we dive into grief, truth, closure, and the family that held Stephen tight when his entire world shifted. So buckle up. This one's powerful.
Hey, Laura, could you take a DNA test? Because I want to triangulate the results. Right. I know our relationship. However you relate to this guy, it'll help us figure this out. So she agrees to take the test, and I forget all about it. Fast forward another 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Becky and I and a couple of friends are on vacation in Hilton Head. And the week is over. We're heading home. We're on the plane in Savannah, flying back to Cincinnati with a connection through Atlanta. And the boarding door is still open and my phone rings. And it's my sister. It's Laura. And she said, Stevie, which, by the way, she's only like one of 5 people in the world that are allowed to call me Stevie, but that's a different issue. Stevie, I got my DNA test back, and some of this stuff doesn't make any sense. I said, well, the first time you're looking at it, those things can be confusing. I said, just go to your connections page. She did. I said, what do you see? She says, I see all these Meltons. I said, great. That's what you should see. What's it say about John Watson? She says, he's nowhere on my report. Corey, I had already done basically there was 8 permutations left by this point in our research, and I knew what that meant. They were not the words I wanted to hear. And she said, my test is also showing a half-brother. J.O. Who's J.O.? And I said, sweetie, J.O., that's me. Jack, Stephen Osborne. I'm your half-brother. And she said, that's not true, because mom is our mom, but dad is our dad. And I said, no, love. What you just told me is that mom is our mom, and dad is your dad. He's not mine. I'm on a plane. And I just panicked. And I decided, I'm getting off the plane. Corey, you've talked to so many people that this has happened to. You are literally, in that moment, you are knocked out of your body. You are suspended in space and time and disbelief. It's like a horror show that you were watching, and now you're in it.
And 30,000 feet in the air.
Well, we hadn't left yet.
Oh, okay.
So I stood.
Thought this story was going in a totally different direction.
I got up, and I was on the aisle, and we heard, ladies and gentlemen, the boarding door is now closed. We'd like for everybody to, that includes you, crazy white man there, row 4. So I did. I sat down next to Becky, and she was listening to the phone call. I had held my phone up to my ear, and she was listening with hers, and she knew exactly what had just happened. I don't have the words to describe the loss, the panic, the total devastation, the disbelief. It was surreal. It was like nothing that I had ever experienced. She's got her hand on my thigh. She's holding my hand. It was a very short flight, Savannah to Atlanta's, I don't know, in the air, probably 25 minutes. We landed at Atlanta, and I got off the plane, and I just walked away. I needed private, quiet time to process all of this, which I was trying to do in the world's busiest airport, Hartsfield. And I melted down. I had to get back on that plane. We landed in Cincinnati. I totally shut down. I basically, I wouldn't talk unless I absolutely had to. And Becky, God love her, she's so sweet, so loving, and she knew where I was. We got home, and I spent the next day just in shock, sitting on our back porch, our screened-in porch, and I believe I may have been drinking. Matter of fact, I'm quite sure I was drinking. One of the things I realized is not only had I lost my dad, the man who was God to me, right, my one true pillar, that it had always helped me through life, the one person in my life that had always shown me true, uncontested, unconditional love, the person who would surrender his life for me. And he had passed away in 1999. But the first time I lost him, I still had the role of the son of a wonderful man. And there's some pride there, right? There's that connection. You carry on the family name. You carry on that bond. You're now that person who, is leading that family name. This time, I lost him. But I lost him to a lie. In that moment, 57 years of a lie. And I was just looking at it, wondering, everything between us was somehow false. I felt like an idiot, right? I felt like I had been played. I felt like I was a fool because I had been lied to. And at that point, you don't know what the truth is. You don't know who knows. You don't know who knew when. He's not here. So I can't go talk to him about it. Matter of fact, the only person who was still alive was my mom, who I hadn't spoken to in probably 20 years.
Oh, wow.
The other thing I realized is I have no idea who my biological father is. I have no clue. The only thing that I kind of could figure out was it was very likely to be one of John Watson's uncles. So that next morning, Becky came out with a cup of coffee and I said, Becky, I don't know where to start. Can you find him for me? That was like the best news she'd heard all day, right? Because she's a forensic genealogist. This was a puzzle. She loved it. I think she was waiting for me to ask. But Corey, you and I both know that those searches could go on for years, decades, with no positive results. So the next morning was Monday morning. I went to work, and she went to work trying to find my bio dad, which she did in about 6 hours. She wrote me, texted me, and said, bingo. And I looked at that text and I said, what the hell does bingo mean? Sure. And I came home and she said, did you get my text? I said, yeah, I got text. What does bingo mean? It's like, I found your dad. Implied, dumbass. But I heard it in her voice, right? It was implied. It was there. My father was a Canadian gentleman. His name is Peter Holmes. Now there's some irony. John Watson gave me the clue. Peter Holmes was the answer. John Watson's uncle is my biological father. He was born in Montreal, and he immigrated to the U.S. in the late 50s. My wife found him in, of all things, customs forms. He's going in and out of the country, from New York to London, London to New York, and New York to Paris, back to Miami, Miami to London, London to Cincinnati, Ohio. Matter of fact, Marymount. He was living 13 miles away from my mom and dad. From my mom and the man who raised me, the man I'm named after, Jack Osborne. Unfortunately, Peter had passed away in 1982, so there was no way to connect with him. His wife had also passed away. He had no biological children. He had 2 adopted children.
He did.
Peter. Well, I always say this. It's so funny. I always say he has no biological children because I think of it that way. And everybody goes, well, he had at least one. Yeah, he did have one. And actually, between you and me, I'm just waiting for the email or the phone call that says, hey, I took a DNA test. I think we should talk. I'm waiting for that phone call.
Me too.
So I don't know how they got together. Here's an interesting thing, though. People talk about nature versus nurture, and I'm sure you've talked about this on your podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Jack Osborne was a bus driver for Queen City Metro, for Cincinnati bus system. If you want to know who my father was, Jack Osborne was my dad. I call him my dad. My dad was, and you're old enough to remember this, my dad was Ralph Cramden.
I knew you were going to say that.
Do you recognize that name?
I love the Honeymooners.
The Honeymooners. Jackie Gleason played Ralph Cramden in The Honeymooners, and that was my dad. Drove a bus just like Ralph. Wore the exact same suit, tie, hat, just like, Ralph Cramden was round and large and loud, just like my dad. They were, literally, I was thinking about suing the makers of The Honeymooners for ripping off my dad. So that's my dad. My stepdad, a man who I love dearly, his name's Jerry Kondo. We still talk today. He's super. Stepdads, you can't get any better. So I have 2 dads, and it was really great. I had 2 men raise me, Jack and Jerry. He was a truck driver for for Holland Motor Express. So I have 2 dads in the transportation, blue-collar workers, great guys, salt of the earth kind of guys. Not real risk takers. I grow up, I'm an entrepreneur. I haven't worked for a major corporation in 35, 40 years. I have always had an unbelievable fascination with aviation. I'm an entrepreneur that has trained salespeople for the last 30 some odd years. Peter Holmes, my biological father, worked for British Airways as their national sales manager and sales trainer for the eastern half of the U.S. I'd never met the man, but I grew up naming my company, aviation industry, and doing essentially exactly what he did. Peter Holmes died one afternoon while giving a keynote speech at an industry forum.
Wow.
And I have probably not had the heart attack, but I have given similar speeches to our industry dozens and dozens of times. It's so mind-blowing how DNA reaches right through everything else and affects your life.
Yep. Yeah, we talk about that a lot on the show. And wow, get that news while you're sitting on an airplane.
Yes, you're the most private information you'll ever get in one of the most public places you could possibly be.
Yeah. Wow. So, Steve, I believe I mentioned this to you before that, Kendall and I, we like to know just enough of somebody's story to get us in trouble because we really like those real, moments, the clutch the pearl moments. So I don't know if you've been able to find out how, why, because, all these people are gone now. Do you have closure there?
Yes, I do. So my closure begins with one of the first things I do is I go to talk to my mom. She's still alive at this point. And John Watson has sent me pictures of my biological father. One that I wish he would have sent me much sooner because it would have saved me $74 for a DNA test because I wouldn't have needed one. I show it to people. I've literally had people say, like, can I see a picture of your dad? I show them a picture. They're like, yeah, that's you. And I had 2 pictures. about the time when she would have known him. And I called her and said, I'm coming over to the house. I have found some stuff that I believe belonged to her. I thought I would go over and surprise her, kind of catch her off guard. So I walked in. And by the way, I recorded the entire conversation on my phone. I walked in, I sat down. I took the pictures of Peter, my biological father. I slid him across the table and I said, got anything you want to tell me? She looked at the picture, looked at me. Her eyes went back and forth several times. And she threw the picture down and says, I don't know who that is. Who's that supposed to be? Your father? I said, we haven't talked in 20 years. That's a pretty damn strange question for you to ask. I show you a picture of a complete stranger and you want to know if it's my dad? Of course it's not my dad. Jack Osborne's my dad, isn't he? Barb? Because when you really want to piss your mom off, you call her by her first name. Corey, the meeting did not go well. I didn't start it off in a good way. And it took me time to realize this later, a couple months. But I didn't go over there looking for answers because, first of all, I knew my mom has a very casual relationship with the truth. That's putting it lightly. And I already had the answers I needed. I went over there with really one intent, and that was to let her know that I knew, and if I could, to hurt her. And I feel bad about that. That was not the best version of myself, and it's not the thing I would recommend people do. But unfortunately, it is what happened. I went over there with intent. And if I'm trying to hurt somebody with words, I'm pretty good at it, unfortunately. I got her in a defensive position. She would just mutter and deny and say some pretty stupid things like, I don't know what you're so upset about. Look at your life. Everything turned out pretty well for you. I was like, so that's your position? I've had a decent life, 57 years of lying and all this other bullshit that's going on. That's what you're absolved of all of that because, I drive a decent older car. Come on. What the hell? She said, I'm not admitting to anything. I don't know who that was. Anyway, the entire conversation lasted 13 minutes from the time I walked in the door until I walked out. I went home to see Becky, and I said, I can't believe it. She stonewalled me. She continued to lie to me. I can't stand it. All I wanted was some answers. All I wanted to know was what the hell was going on back when I was born. Just tell me, what was the situation? And Becky looked at me and said, have you read her book? I said, I'm sorry, her what? Her book? Have you read her book? She said, my mom never written a book. I would know that. Of course, as it always happens, Becky hits the keyboard, click, 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 spins the keyboard around, says, no, it's right here. It's on Amazon. You want me to get a copy? I said, yeah, but buy a used copy. Now, first of all, I'm just shocked that she wrote anything. But we get the book. It's a memoir about her life. And it details chronologically, from the time she was a teen to the time she started this ministry, this Pentecostal ministry of saving children. It's very whitewashed. She uses no names. But it's written chronologically. And if you know what's going on, you don't need any help, which I did, of course. I knew everything. And on pages 6 and 7, she details the time and circumstances around my conception, which I got to tell you, brother, if there's one thing you don't want to read, you don't want to read a book where your mom's talking about the sex she's having that led to you.
Right.
I literally wanted to pour bleach in my eyes when I was done. Because on pages 6 and 7, these are direct quotes. from the book. She writes, I found myself alone with 2 small children in tow. My life was about nothing but men, sex, and money. The 2 small children are my older sisters, Kathy and Terry. Next in the birth order is yours truly. And then it was things like, come on, doll, let's go to Miami this weekend. Everybody's swinging. Let's do it. Several other things. She was doing amphetamine so that she could keep up the pace. What I found was something that was extremely incongruent from this woman and that she had presented herself as. And I know people change over time, and I should really be fair there. But if you know the things that I know, and you know the dates and, conception and everything, I found out that I was the product of a out-of-state amphetamine-fueled swingers party.
Wow.
So I thought that really gave me a head start in life. But I gotta tell you, there's nothing like reading that in a book penned by your mom. I'm not sure what was worse, finding out that my dad was not my dad or finding out how I was conceived. Anyway, but it doesn't really matter, right? You're here. It doesn't matter. Your origin doesn't matter. It's everything that came after that. And then I found out that my mom, after we, again, start birth certificates, marriage certificates, divorce decrees, my mom had 5 children with at least 4 different men. And just not the pious, righteous person that maybe we thought she was.
Wow.
So,
what did this revelation do for your relationship with your sisters?
So this is where my story might be a little bit different than some other NPEs. My family was fantastic about it. My sisters, who, we've always had good relationships, except for the fact that I had actually, because I felt so different from them, I had either consciously or subconsciously created some distance between us. Because I couldn't bear how I felt once I was around them. When I was spending time with them, they're all so together, and I'm the guy standing inside. And there were times, please forgive me for saying these words, if you hear them, my siblings, there were times when I wished I was an only child. Not because of anything they did, but because how I felt about me. And in that moment, when that moment happened, when I became an only child, there was nothing I more desperately wanted than to have my family. And to have all of them. But now here I am in a position where I am literally the reason why any one of them could take the exit ramp. And I couldn't blame any one of them if they did. So now it's an individual negotiation with every one of them. And to a person. They were all like, hey, don't get any ideas of leaving or going anywhere. You're going nowhere. My oldest sister, my oldest sister, Kathy, said, I will sit on your chest to keep you close. But my Cameron Diaz sister, we were born around the same time. We were born back, and we were growing up in the 70s. And in 1977, there was this real cult flick that came out. There was this movie about a guy and his sister, and they were fighting the forces of evil with their friends. You may have seen it. It's called Star Wars.
Never heard of it.
And she always referred to us as Luke and Leia. Always referred to us as Luke and Leia. She's like, you're my Luke. Because when things got rough, right, I was in a way her protector, but not that she ever needed protecting. She's a hellraiser herself. I found out in September, October time frame, and come early December, It's Christmas, and I'm still in pieces. And we're getting ready we're at a Christmas party, and I'm stocking the bar or whatever I'm doing, and I'm still just emotionally devastated from this whole thing. She walks up behind me, puts her arms around my chest from behind, squeezes me as tight as she can, and she just whispers in my ear, "You're still my Luke. I love you. Nothing changes." My stepbrother, Jerry, I had to go tell him we weren't related at all. And he picked up my DNA test results and said, "This piece of paper tells me that you and I aren't brothers." I said, "Yeah, Jerry, that's what it says." We're in the kitchen. He tossed it towards the garbage can. He said, "There's no piece of paper you could bring in here that tells me we ain't brothers. We've been brothers for as long as I can remember. That means nothing." So my experience was, I apologize and I feel bad for those of you who haven't had this, but everything that I was afraid I was going to lose, I gained. All of my relationships got stronger. The day that I learned that Jack Osborne wasn't my biological father, I thought it was one of the worst things that could ever happen to me. And now, 3.5 years later, I realize it's one of the best things that ever happened to me. It really was. It took away all my doubts. It took away all my fears. It took away those feelings of being an alien. I am an alien, but now I know why. And once you know, it doesn't matter. Everything just became closer. I thought I had lost my dad. And I did temporarily, to a spit-fill file in an auto-generated email. What I really learned was, no, I didn't. Because I found out that man knew. And it made absolutely no difference to him. To the last day of his life, he loved me. He wasn't just a good man, he was a great man. Corey, probably the best thing that came out of it was I got a new definition of family. I got a new definition of family that I share with everybody that I can. Family is defined by love and commitment only, nothing else. If that's not your family, you need to go find the family that you deserve. Go find the people that love you and that are committed to you, and love the hell out of them. Just hold them close and never let them go. The best thing that came out of this was a stronger definition of family. Go find the family you deserve.
I can see in my mind right now, Jack coming home from work one day in his uniform, 10-year-old Steve standing there and just looking at you and saying, "Baby, you're the greatest."
He did frequently. And Corey, where I end up is I'm actually okay with everything that's happened. I think if I have a message to your listeners, if you're in this situation, if you're walking this path, you need to get to a point where you can progress with love and forgiveness and acceptance in your heart. You are not able to change the past. And as distasteful as it might be, you have to accept that. And the other thing is that you need to realize that everybody has their own take, their own facets. They're looking at this from their own perspective. And just move forward with love and forgiveness. My mom did a lot of things I don't agree with, but I also believe I understand now why she did that. I'm totally okay with it. I can't judge her life. I can't judge her actions or what she did. She may have been trying to pay the rent. I don't know. All I know is she raised me and she loved me. My last name is Oz. So as you can imagine, I was associated with the Wizard of Oz for so many years of my life. Matter of fact, my nickname for so many people is Oz. So the question comes up, what have you learned, Dorothy? What I've learned is we put so much emphasis on DNA, and we really shouldn't. John, I'm sure you've heard this, but we share 50% of our DNA with a banana. We share 98.8% of our DNA with chimpanzees. For science to tell us who we're related to, who our lineage is, who our grandfather is, they're splitting that DNA hair 300,000 times. So there's really not that much difference in us. And DNA really shouldn't be that significant. I look at my bio dad and the man who raised me, and I look at their actions in my life. My bio dad was involved in my life for minutes, in a selfish act. The man who raised me gave me 30 plus years of my life while he was alive, and he did everything that a dad should do, no matter how tough my mom made it on him. That's my dad. That's my real dad. And here's the thing I think everybody should think about is I came away with a brand new definition of family. And the true definition of family are the people who love you, right? They love you. They're committed to you. Matter of fact, family is defined only by, in my book, only by those two things, love and commitment. If you love somebody and you're committed to that person is your family. If you think right now, when you get to a point where you're in trouble, or you're struggling, the shit has hit the fan, and you are on your knees, who is the person who's going to kick that door open and put themselves squarely between you and your troubles? Whoever that person is that you're thinking of right now, that's your family. DNA be damned. By the way, if you happen to share DNA, that's wonderful. If you happen to have the same last name, that's great. Neither of those things are required. Family are just people who love you, that will protect you. They hold you in their heart, and they hold your heart in their hands. They're the people who love you and who will take care of you. They cry with you. They laugh with you. That's your family. By the way, if you happen to have a birth family that for whatever reason has their head in a very dark place and they can't see through to loving you the way that you should be loved, then go find the family you deserve. That's what I encourage people to do. They are out there. There are people that absolutely will love you for who you are. Go find those people. Go find the family you deserve. Let them be your family. That's what I've learned. And there's no place like home.
Stephen, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story.
Well, thank you so much for having me as a guest. I also want to personally thank you guys for all that you do for the community. It's a huge lift that you guys do. I greatly appreciate it, and your work with the Right to Know organization. I think that's also wonderful. Greatly appreciate it. Happy to be a board member with you. Honored to be a board member with you.
Yeah, it's, this community has given a lot back to us too. Things we didn't know we needed. So we're very happy to be part of it. Every time we finish an interview like this, Kendall and I like to take a moment to sit with it because these stories aren't just interviews. They're reminders of why we do this. We created Family Twist because the stories of people like Stephen matter, because behind every DNA surprise or family secret is a human heart trying to make sense of it all. And if you've gone through something similar or you love someone who has, we hope these conversations help you feel a little bit less alone. Stephen said it best. Family is defined by love and commitment. Nothing more, nothing less. If you're listening right now and you're questioning where you belong, please know that the family you deserve is out there. Sometimes it's the people you were born to. Sometimes it's the people who show up when you need them the most. And sometimes it's both. Thank you for being with us. And remember, family secrets are the ultimate plot twist. The Family Twist podcast is presented by Savoir Faire Marketing Communications and produced by How the Cow Ate the Cabbage, LLC.